Whenever you're working with the quadratic formula, there's a couple things that you can do right from the beginning to give you an idea of what your graph is going to look like or how many solutions that you're going to have. In review, the quadratic formula just says that if we have an equation ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, that our x is going to be equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now that seems pretty complicated, but this actually works. Even if it's something is easily factorable, you can still plug it into the quadratic formula and it will still give you solutions. But you can actually take a look because of this right here. This is called the discriminant. B squared minus 4ac. So even before we look at any numbers coming out of our equation, if we take b squared and subtract 4 times ac, we can get an idea of what our graph is going to look like, at least kind of a rough idea. Now, the first thing that we ought to point out is if your a is positive, your parabola is going to open upward. If a is negative, it's going to open down. And that's just with any parabola. But if you can evaluate your discriminant, all we want to take a look at is this discriminant. Is it greater than 0, equal to 0, or less than 0? And here's why. If the discriminant is greater than 0, then that means we can figure out what this is. We can take the square root and we're going to come up with 2 real solutions. Meaning, let's say if A is positive and it's opening up, that means that it's going to begin down here below the x-axis somewhere and it's going to open up, and we're going to have 2 places that it crosses the x-axis. Now, if it's equal to 0, that means we're taking out our plus or minus. This becomes 0 and we're really just left with the solution negative b over 2a. That's just one solution, meaning it only crosses the x-axis in one location. That means that the vertex has to be somewhere on this x-axis. And again, it'll open up if our a is positive. Now, if it's less than 0, that makes everything under our square root negative, and you can't take the square root of a negative number and come up with a real solution. Now, when you get into imaginary numbers, and there are places that you will use complex numbers and imaginary numbers, but if this becomes negative, then this is no longer workable, which means it doesn't cross the x-axis anywhere, which means your vertex is somewhere above the x-axis, and again is going to open upwards. Now, if a is negative, then all of this is going to be flipped. But the same principles apply. But that's what your graphs are going to look like depending on what this discriminant looks like. And so if you know you're going to come up with no solutions, if you can just plug in your b squared minus 4ac and realize, well, that's a negative number, then you're going to get no solutions. So it just makes it easy to evaluate what's happening before you start really doing a whole lot, trying to factor it or trying to graph it or whatever it is that you're trying to do. You can get an idea of what's happening. If these videos are helpful to you, please like and subscribe. And as always, pass that information on to those who it might be helpful for. Thanks for watching.